why strength training. To me, it instills the fundamentals of physical movement in a very structured way, in a way that literally anyone that has the physical ability to move their joints in that way can do. We see 80-year-olds deadlifting hundreds of pounds. Do you see 12-year-olds deadlifting significant weight? You see people of all ages physically challenging themselves in a structured, controlled way through strength training that has benefits that extend beyond muscle and strength, right? Their lifespan and health span benefits as well. And so without these efforts, without steady strategy and approach to maintaining that physical being, that physical body, it doesn't matter how sharp your brain is. There's only so much you're able to do.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of Dieting from the Inside Out, and I am stoked for today's episode because we have a reoccurring guest. I am joined by my friend Austin Current. Austin has been on the show. It was, I want to say, a couple years ago. Austin is an incredible follow. He's an incredible person to have in your newsfeed and to be learning from, because when it comes to strength training and how to approach the training piece, especially the mindset into training, Austin is one of the best you can learn from. He wrote an amazing book called The Science of Strength Training. We'll leave a link around wherever you're listening to this where you can grab a copy. But Austin is incredible when it comes to this stuff. Like, he's one of the best there is. And it's funny, we talk about this on the show where Austin is amazing, where he talks about this stuff where you get value from it, whether you're, let's say, a seasoned coach where you already know about high level physiology and all this stuff, and you can still learn from him and pick up on things. Or you can read his material as a complete novice. Like, you've never done anything. You've never worked out before and you don't feel overwhelmed or talked down to. I don't know how he does it, but he's incredible with it. So in today's episode, we get into a lot about strength training specifically, not just like boring strength training stuff. Looking at my notes from when we chatted, we talked about a lot of the new stuff going on in his life. He's got a new business venture. He's got some other cool stuff going on. Basically, here's one of the things that I really wanted to get into is how to balance the dichotomy of optimization and just, being practical. Right? Because we talk about, if we talk about this a lot, where if something is not practical, it doesn't matter how optimal it is. If optimal is not practical, it's no longer optimal. And there's a balance there though, because we don't want it to be so practical, like what you're doing in your plan. We don't want it to be so practical where it's not effective because it's just farting around the gym, but we don't want it to be so optimal and sciencey where it's not even practical at all, or you're not even going to do it. So where's the balance? We talked a lot about that. We talked about a lot of how does someone get the most out of their training sessions without getting overwhelmed? So if you're in that boat of you go to the gym or you start to train and you just get overwhelmed with the best how to and all the craziness, we talk about that. We also get into a lot of the common pitfalls, where most people go wrong with their training and things like that. And then we also got into, if I remember right, a lot of the mindset side of training, like the mental piece. And I'm not talking about just like go harder and work hard and, grind through it. I'm talking about the mindset and the headspace you need to approach training with. So I absolutely think you'll get a lot out of this episode. I know you'll love it. Austin is, like I said, an amazing person to learn from. So stick around. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you in just a second. Cool, dude. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. So update us. It's been a couple minutes. Like, it's been a couple years since we've chatted on the show last. So tell me what's new in the life of Austin Current. What's the current on Austin Current?
Yeah. My old Twitter handle was current events.
Wow.
And I thought I was pretty proud of that, honestly.
Yeah. 100%, bro.
And I exited stage left in 2012 from that platform and haven't gone back since through its many iterations. And but I don't do anything with that handle anymore. I thought it was pretty good though. But since we've chatted, I wrote a book. I published a book called The Science of Strength Training. That's been a big thing.
It's required reading for my staff, ironically. So
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. That's been a big thing that's happened professionally for me since we chatted last. And then I'm currently working on finishing and building a new brand under that title, Science of Strength Training. So it's scienceofstrengthtraining.com. And that's my new coaching brand and new training app and all of that stuff. So kind of what I'm doing and what I'm working on professionally, kind of that next chapter for me professionally. And so that's kind of, since we've chatted, that's that's pretty much what I've been up to.
Love that. That's so exciting, man. That's so exciting.
The book was a lot.
Do you think there will be multiple iterations of it? Do you think you'll do more, like, or do you think you're like, nope, never doing a book again? Like, I have author friends who are in both camps. You got like the John Maxwell's who are like 97 books and counting, versus some are like, all right, I did this and that's off my list.
Yeah, well, no, I definitely want to write another. I enjoy the writing process, and there's something to it where it's to me, it's intellectually a lot like bodybuilding was physically. And I enjoyed the process of bodybuilding. So I had a professional career in bodybuilding when I was younger. So I turned pro in the IFBB when I was 20 and competed in the IFBB till I was 24, I believe, as a physique bikini guy. And the process of like showing up physically in the kind of the discipline you have to have day to day for that pursuit, the closest thing I could compare that to, it was like kind of the writing process for the book, right? Because you have to show up you are showing up every day to sit down, read, and write. I mean, there's no other thing you can possibly be doing that's productive towards the goal you're trying to complete.
Sure.
And there's very strict, harsh deadlines because you basically, this was also, I wrote this during 2020 and all the things that were going on during that time. And so as far as like printing dates and the book going to the printers and going through that process, you had a very specific date that was like, hey, we have 18 months. The book has to be done and to print fully ready by this date. And so we just reverse engineered the due dates and all the time that was going to be needed in between for every part of the book. And then, because the book's very visual too. So it's not like a lot of the book was working with, photos that traveling to we traveled to Prime Fitness headquarters. Awesome. Yeah, we traveled to Prime Fitness headquarters. Thankfully, those guys are fantastic human beings, and they're always have an open door for me, which I'm very grateful for. And they allowed us to come to their showroom, which has every piece of equipment you'd imagine, has all the space you'd need. And my wife's a professional photographer, and so that helps out. And so
mildly convenient.
Yeah, mildly convenient. So we traveled there and we got over 1,000 images, which ended up becoming the CGI renderings of the people doing the movements that you see in the book. So all of those are based off of me actually performing the movement in the way that it, ideally should be performed.
Right.
And so that was a big process of it, right? And then there was all these approval processes that went on for months of, I'd get sent 10 or 12 photos, 10 or 12 exercises, and it's like, okay, move the foot here, move the stance from this wide to this wide, move these hands here. This needs to be neutral grip, not supinated. This arm path needs to be a lot better aligned with the cable or resistance band versus it being so off, like things like that were just so kind of the tedious back and forth.
Wow.
For months, and it's just, so the sitting down and like reading and writing and researching was definitely a very strenuous part of it, but it was only, I'd say that part was condensed probably to like a 6-month period out of the 18 months realistically. And so, yeah, I mean, I brought all that up, just the discipline of that and kind of the pursuit of the day-to-day pursuit and having your mindset on something like that goal of finishing a project that size. It was very similar to embarking on like an 18-month contest prep or something. Sure. Where you're just kind of the day-to-day grind of, I have this end goal. It's very far away, but every decision I make every single day leading up to that point will define what that thing is by the end. And, I think for a lot of people, potentially listening here, it's a very, especially from a coaching perspective, you and I speaking about it, it's not dissimilar to someone going through some form of transformation, right? It's, hey, I want to look I want to look a certain way or feel a certain way in 18 months. And well, the decisions we make every day are going to inevitably lead us to where we want to get or not. And there's obviously some wiggle room there, but it's not too dissimilar from that process as well.
The thing I love so much about your book is I didn't realize one book could hit both camps that are so far away. What I mean by that is, like, I grew up a kinesiology nerd. Like, what got me into this field was the fact that, like, the science of movement was fascinating. Like, and it started when I was 13 about, like, when I was in martial arts, I learned if I pivot my heel, twist my hips, I can hit harder. I'm like, oh, that's dope. And then I had all these injuries because of martial arts. So I got into physical therapy. So then I learned, like, the physical therapy stuff around treatment. And I'm like, this is fucking cool. So I grew up like a physiology nerd and a kinesiology nerd and all that stuff. And there's stuff in your book that I'm like, why did I not have this in school? Because if you look at old school textbooks, it's like, it's hard to break down diagrams and everything. Just because it's just the way the body looks and works. And it's really hard to put that on paper and actually understand it. But then I feel like I could give your book to a brand new novice client who just wants to learn more, and they're not going to get overwhelmed either. But somehow you've managed to hit both camps that are, one's really educated and the other is not. So that's why I love your book so much.
I appreciate that. That's kind, and really was the goal when I set out to write it, and lay it out and really kind of work through researching and writing the book, because I had two audiences in mind when I wrote it, which was the kind of like early on gym goer, the novice gym goer, or intermediate gym goer, whatever, the person who's kind of a fitness enthusiast or is interested in learning more about this thing that is the gym that they do on a normal or semi-normal basis. But also I wanted people so I guess there's slightly three, but two main audiences, like early on gym goers, which include that novice, everything from like just starting out to the intermediate. So if someone went to their doctor and they're like, hey, I need you to get into the gym. I need you to be healthier. I need you to move more. I need you to contract muscles. I need you to stave off sarcopenia and osteoporosis and dyspnea and all these muscle related diseases that we get as we age. If we don't use it, we lose it, as Steve Carell very eloquently says in 40-Year-Old Virgin. So, and he is a scientist. So
he is a scientist.
He is a scientist. That is science. But in all seriousness, so, if someone, and I get a lot of emails from these readers, which makes me extremely happy. And so, I get a lot of emails from people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who've picked this book up. They've gotten they've had that conversation with a family member or a doctor, and they're like, okay, I need to go to the gym. Okay, I need to start strength training. And whether they get on Amazon or, walk into a Barnes and Noble or something equivalent, I wanted my book to be sort of a reference guide for them to start doing it safely and effectively. And then the other kind of that side of the continuum, and then the other side of the continuum, I want it to be very applicable to, personal trainers who are maybe a little bit earlier on in their journey or even more seasoned personal trainers that need a better guidebook on how to speak to the everyday gym goer. Because I think there's a lot of language that we learn as personal trainers and become more advanced as personal trainers that we often lose sight of actually how to speak to someone who's really early on in the process. And so my hope was to my goal was to kind of bridge that gap between the two and kind of merge those worlds the best I could. And I'm really grateful that I was, I guess, somewhat able to do that.
Knocked it out of the park, bro. It's incredible.
I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And so if there's going to be more books, I hope, I hope I have a long life, and I hope my cognitive abilities hang on as long as they can. And, and I have an opportunity to write more books, because I did really enjoy it. But the scienceofstrengthtraining.com, the new website, really is kind of my next big project as far as a quote unquote another book, where I'm using that website to expand on all the topics that I talked about in the book. Because, you know, when you look in the book, each topic is covered for the most part. And I tried to be as expansive as possible and kind of hit everything. So if you weren't aware of something, you were at least made aware of it, and that it has importance in the process. You know, but within that too, there's only, you know, if we're talking about bones in the book, maybe there's only 1,000 words total on bones, right? So there's obviously a lot more to talk about as far as bones and strength training and mineral adaptations and bone mineral density and certain research and certain like strategies and stuff. So I'm hoping to use that website to expand, and the brand as a whole, to really expand on topics as I can, and give, whether it's, again, those two different audiences, a place to go and kind of develop the site to be, you know, just a trusted source for all things strength training.
I'm curious, and this, I'm just curious if this is more of like a personal just desire, or if there was any deeper or anything else, is why strength training for you? Like a lot of professionals go like the nutrition route, or like over the years, I found my favorite spot is like the mindset and psychology and behavior pattern side. Like I started off being like the physiology, kinesiology guy, but like I felt like that chapter of that being my, like it was when all the content I was creating was all about tutorial videos and all this stuff, which I still love. But somewhere along my journey, I found out I felt more called over in this direction. So for you, is there a story behind why the strength training is your main focus?
It's been the one constant in my life since I was around 12 years old.
Okay.
Is the easiest way to put it. I started strength training around 11 or 12. I started with body weight stuff, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups in my room before bed. I'd have a big glass of milk and, you know, fall asleep for however long. And, a 6th grader, 7th grader does. But, you know, so I started lifting when I was 11 or 12. You know, my brother got me into it. And I've been very fortunate to be immersed within it ever since. And I've been very fortunate to have very, very educated, mostly overqualified for the position they were in, coaches and trainers over my life through sports and whatever else, or professional opportunities to shadow or work under or be trained by or coached by. And so, you know, ever since I was 12 up till now, I mean, I've just been surrounded by really, really very intelligent people who really guided me in a good way towards, you know, proper form, proper progression, you know, you name it. So, I mean, I've been doing quote unquote the right thing since I was 12 years old. So,
no wonder you were a IFBB pro by like 20.
Yeah. And genetically I was set up for it, thankfully as well. And, you know, I can thank my parents and grandparents and their parents for that. But, you know, it's a big part of me just being so ingrained into it. It's really all I've known. And it's been a constant through line in my life. And it's been a constant interest of mine and curiosity of mine. And when I was younger, trying to discover whatever intelligence I had within me, I struggled for a long time to find something I connected to and that I could contribute positively to the world. And, you know, through high school and stuff, you know, just through all schooling up basically that happened before college, I really was lost. I didn't know where I wanted to take it. I had no interest outside of physical movement, physical expression, whether it was through sports or through strength training, you know. And even in high school, I'd go to the gym in the morning before school. So I'd see all my friends' parents at the gym before school. Then I'd go to school. And then after school, I would go to the gym with all my friends. And so that's even in high school. And so that just continued on. And that doesn't count all the stuff for sports or practices or whatever. And so I've just always been really drawn to that. And I think it's just the way that I express myself best in the world. And through all that experience, and then through the curiosity of study, you know, and university degrees and certifications and whatnot, and, you know, years of researching and writing about it, it's been in training clients in person, online, you name it. you just accumulate ways of discussing it, to talk about it. And for me, I've been fortunate enough as well to connect to it in a way that people seem to also connect with it and understand it. And so the way I discuss a lot of these topics, people tend to gravitate towards it and can have maybe an easier time understanding it. And so that's really it, man. I don't really have a deeper, that's as deep as it goes for me.
Sure.
And I don't know what else I would do. I think you drop me in the middle, pluck me out of my life, drop me in another world. I think I would adapt and I think I'd be fine. But in the world that I've grown up in, the only life I've known, form of reality I've understood has been through this.
Sure.
And it's been the best way to communicate with others and
Right.
instill these things, whether it is talking through, because through my coaching, I do a lot of mindset stuff. I talk a lot about psychology. I talk more to one-on-one people, but to kind of get you into the door, my best way I've found is just to create more confidence within you while you're in the gym. And then
Sure.
you may be interested to work with me. And then once you're working with me, there's a lot deeper stuff that we start to go into and unpack, but that's kind of my foothold. That's how I
love that.
get you
I
in the
love
door.
that, man.
Yeah.
Well, and I view it in my stuff the very much the same way because stereotypically, I don't consider myself a fitness person, right? Like I don't consider myself like this diehard fitness fanatic. If anything, I don't care for it as much. Like I naturally don't want to go work out. I don't want to eat right, like all the things. But what I have been fascinated with for the last decade now is the levels of personal development, right? And my thing is, and I think I stumbled on this, that the people who need it the most are interested the least. Mm-hmm. Right. But for some reason, if you dangle the carrot of lose 30 pounds in front of their face, they're like, take my money now. Or like, hey, let's whatever I need to do. Oh, means we got to fix your relationship with food. We got to change your thought patterns. We got to address your actual fundamental habits. And they're like, okay, fuck. But if it means what I'll do is get this 30 pounds off, we're good. So it's almost like, for me, I view it as like the gateway drug into the more fundamental pieces to change your life.
It is. And it's also the most proven way we have to maintain a body that was designed for a different world and allow it to continue to thrive in the world that we now live in, right?
Yeah.
It's like having a super old, we're not computers, but it's like having a super old computer that you're constantly having to work on and update, or let's say a super old car, right? We're not cars either, but it's for like metaphor purposes, it's not too dissimilar where you have the older your car is, the more it ages, the more routine maintenance, the more you got to work on it. You got to tinker with it. You got to show up every day, check the oil, check the, you got to check all the stuff, right? I don't know. That's as deep as I know about engines. But I see my wheelhouse there.
Same.
Yeah. But I can tell you a ton about the body, but internal combustion engine, I'm lost. So it's not too dissimilar, right? So the older that we get, and the older the machinery gets, and the newer that the world kind of becomes, we have to do things that help us maintain that physical, our essentially our brain's only way to manipulate the outside world. Right. Our body is our brain's ability to express itself in the real three-dimensional world. Without our body being able to respond to our brain's demands, we're useless, right? And that we see, there's neurodegenerative diseases that you see, like a person is cognitively all there. They may be like Stephen Hawking is a great example. One of the most brilliant people to ever live, but physically useless. I mean, his brain cannot communicate. There's just disruptions. And so for me, it's like, if you're fortunate enough to not have one of these disabilities or diseases, one, it's almost a respect to the privilege of having the ability to do it, that you should do it. And then the only way to continue to be able to do it into the future is to maintain the physical property of what your brain needs to express itself and manipulate the outside world, right?
Sure.
And to layman's terms, live our life, right? To live our life in a way we want to and have autonomy and control, and to have a sense of longevity within this thing, and enjoy it more, right? Because if you don't, then the expression of like, oh, your 20s and 30s will be the best years of your life, because after that, your body's going to start falling apart, and your life's no longer going to be as great as you wanted it to be, or you forecasted it to be in your mind, right? And so without these efforts, without a steady strategy and approach to maintaining that physical being, that physical body, it doesn't matter how sharp your brain is. Like there's only so much you're able to do, which to me is, if you have the ability to alter that, if you have the ability to change that trajectory for yourself, I think you should absolutely take full control of it.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Let me ask you this, and this is one of the things that I love the way that you so eloquently speak about this stuff, is for you, for the average person, for the average gym goer, the average middle-aged mom who's just trying to feel better and start this stuff, where's the balance between the most optimizing blah, 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 blah program and it just being practical and doable? Because I feel like people get caught on one extreme or the other. They're listening to all the professors and all the super scientists online, and they're like, it's great information. Like, don't get me wrong. Like for example, I love Cassim Hansen as much as the next guy, but like for 35-year-old Mrs. Jones, listening to him talk about a lat pull, it's I thought I just pulled the bar to my face. Like, but you know what I'm saying? Where I feel like some people are so caught up in like the optimization. Well, now that's actually becoming more of a hindrance, but we also know not all workouts are created equal, and we shouldn't be going in there just throwing weights around. So where's the average person like go with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way I kind of start from first principles, right? I try to start there. So we understand that for muscles to grow or even to be maintained and to stay healthy as not only functional parts of our bodies that help us, again, express ourselves and manipulate the outside world the way we want, but also as endocrine organs, things that help the rest of our body continue to stay healthy, right? More healthy muscle tissue means healthier cardiovascular, cardiometabolic health, metabolic health generally, lower risk of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, you name it. So healthy muscle tissue in and of itself is an endocrine organ. It's something that helps systemically across our body. And so we understand that we need to train it, right? We need to make it fight against resistance to adapt, grow, or at least be maintained. And so with that, we understand that we have joints that those muscles attach to, right? So for me, it's first principles is, what are those joints, right? So thinking of like the main joints, elbow, shoulder, hip, knee. Those are main ones, right? Wrist, ankle, obviously there too. And there's more joints than that, but those are our main primary joints, right? And so what do those joints do? So if you are standing there and kind of moving your joint in each way that it moves naturally, right? You don't need to have a in-depth understanding of anatomy to understand, like, I do this with my arms. I flex and extend them. I can't really adduct and abduct my arm. I use my shoulder for that. So my shoulder does those things while also flexing and extending. Okay, that's good to know. My knee mainly flexes and extends. And my hip does what my shoulder does. So my hips and shoulders move in many planes of motion. Great. My elbows and knees mainly just move two directions. Great, good to know. So we choose a movement that trains each one of those things. Start there. And for me, like that's optimized, right? That's optimized for the 35-year-old, 40-year-old mom who's going into the gym. It's pick a movement that trains a joint's function, or that, the muscles function that goes around that certain joint. So That's why we have things like lateral raises, or we do chest presses, right? Because those are opposite motions as we bring the arms closer to the midline with a chest press or something like that. Or we take the arms away from the midline with like a dumbbell lateral raise. Great. That trains that joint in those two main directions. Those are two great movements. We have a tricep, any type of tricep push down or bicep curl. Great. Elbow joint's taken care of. Knee joint, any type of hinging or leg curl or leg extension movement. That's the knee joint. That's taken care of. The hip, any type of hinge or, like a hanging knee raise is for the flexion, and any type of hinging movement like squats or RDLs or anything like that, any type of squat pattern. Great. That's the extension. So it's to really kind of take it back to first principles. It's what are the joints we have, the main joints? What are movements? What's at least one movement that you can accomplish and do competently or somewhat competently enough where you have enough confidence in it to start to get better at it and work even harder in it? Start there, choose one, or maybe have two options that you go to kind of cycle through that you enjoy, and then become more confident within those movements. And as you become more confident, you're able to train harder and harder and harder. And the more competent you are at something and the harder you're working at it, you generally tend to enjoy it more. Right. And that's we need a certain level of challenge and competency to kind of reach, that's kind of the formula for flow state.
Yeah.
Right. We have enough, it's enough of a challenge, but we have enough of a competency and skill at the thing to where we sort of just lose ourselves in it, And I think for me, that's what strength training is I've been able to learn how to make it continuously challenging over my life. And I have a high degree of skill and competency at it. And I also know it's good for me. So all those things are reinforcing of like, this is a good thing. I enjoy this thing. I feel better after I do it. But to go back, like as far as an optimized program for the individual, it's what's going to be best for you. What can you do most consistently? What you can show up and do with confidence. And so pick a movement per joint, at least one movement per joint action, right? Like we talked through, and then train that. And I think and then train that as hard as you can for a few sets and move on and do that as often as you can throughout the week. And that's truthfully, like you're going to see all of the benefits that you're after, like you're going to achieve at least 90% of the benefits you will achieve regardless by just doing that. Right. Yeah. And I think that's an important caveat to have in mind when you're thinking about, optimizing a program is 90%. Some of these numbers are fairly arbitrary. I know it's north of 80%, but let's say 90% for at least most people is going to be taken care of by just doing the basics consistently enough and trying hard enough at that thing or at those basics. And truthfully, like you're going to get 80 to 90% there. And as far as health outcomes, like, there was a new study that came out that, 60 minutes of resistance training or resistance strength training, sometimes you hear it called resistance training or strength training. They're both the same thing. Those are synonyms. By 60 minutes of that activity per week, you lower your risk of all-cause mortality by up to 33+%.
It's crazy.
So it's like, and I've seen maybe upwards of 40% even. So it's like, which again, numbers are arbitrary, but it's like a big chunk of us losing our life, truly the only thing we have, by just doing 60 minutes of this thing per week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just show up, man. Like, just do something. Like,
imagine if that was a pill. Imagine if that was a pill. Take this
on
pill
my website. Yeah, on my website, I have this blurb on my website that's like, imagine there was a magic pill that increased your health span, lifespan, longevity, improved your sex life, improved your mood, reduced or staved off any form of anxiety and depression, made you more muscular, made you stronger, made you more capable in the world, would you take it? And it's like, 100%. Yeah. And that's just like, okay, perform 60 minutes of strength training a week and see if your life doesn't change for the better.
Yep.
Right? So that's the magic pill.
I love it. Well, and the thing is, I'm really glad that you talked about it that way, because it's really simple. You're like, hey, what does your knee do? Okay, do these exercises that makes your knee do the things knees do, or and so forth. But I think a lot of people, especially the community that I talk to a lot, they get so engulfed in just, we'll just say, diet culture nonsense, where they're like, oh, I have to do a single leg pistol squat on a Bosu ball while overhead pressing while doing a back kick flip on a skateboard. And it's like,
yeah.
But it's not like that. Like the term I use all the time is just fundamental strength training. That's all we're talking about. And I don't personally, this is just maybe my bias, I don't see a reason for the average person to do non-fundamental strength training. Like, we're not talking about high-level CrossFit athletes. We're not talking about bodybuilding. We're not talking about high-performance athletes. I'm talking about your average 35-year-old Mrs. Jones who wants to lose her 30 pounds and still drink wine every night, or every couple times a night, or a couple times a week. There we go. A couple times a night's a little excessive. But I don't see a reason where they should be doing anything other than basic fundamentals 2-3 times a week, and it not be that big of a deal. Would you agree with that? Or do you think that it depends, or what's your thoughts?
No, 1,000%. And right. And I think it's cyclical. It's phasic, right? It comes in seasons. It comes in waves, right? We all have different periods of our life where things make more sense at different times. So, there's a point in my life, as I previously alluded to, that, when from the age of 14 to 24, so that 10, 11 year period of my life, I probably was training twice a day, every day. Maybe took one day off from training for 10 years. I mean, for 10 straight years, basically. Right. Okay. Well, there's a lot of, and I've been very fortunate to where there hasn't been a season of my life where I've been completely immobilized or in a body cast where my body couldn't at least hang on to some of that muscle tissue, if not most of it. And so it's like we have these seasons where we're going to have more opportunity to invest in that. And if you have, even if that's a 4-week period, even if that's a 6-week period, whatever that is for you, 3 months, I don't care. Don't think, this is where kind of the black or white thinking gets people in trouble, right? Instead of, and this is where the analogy comes from of, think less about a light switch coming on and off, and think more about a dimmer switch that increases or decreases the intensity of the light, right? And so think of that as like your fitness dial versus your fitness switch. And I think as soon as you can change your mindset around that, where even at any given part of the day, you can turn that fitness dial up and down, and you're going to, right? As we're sitting here right now, our fitness dial is low. It's as dim as it can get, if not somewhat off, right? Because I'm just sitting here, like, I'm not doing anything. But this morning, my fitness dial was all the way up. I trained legs this morning before we hopped on. The fitness dial was as up as it could. I had a good breakfast after that. My fitness dial was still high. And then, I started to turn that down. I took a shower. I sat down to talk to you. And then after this, I'll turn my fitness dial about halfway up and go for a long walk. And then turn that fitness dial back down as I sit down for work. You can think about it on a daily basis, or you can think about it on a cyclical basis as far as seasons go, right? So, during these next 3 months, for a lot of individuals, which is fantastic, a lot of individuals are going to really crank that dial up. They're going to crank that fitness dial up, which includes nutrition and everything else that comes along with it. And I don't want anyone to think that that's a useless effort or it's a useless pursuit, because it's not. Like, the things that you can achieve in 3 months are pretty insane. And I know working with clients, you've seen people and completely transform their life in a matter of 3 months, if not 6 months or whatever, right? And even just six weeks at doing something, you're like, oh, I feel like a different human being in general. So you can change your psychology around it. You can change your cognitive disposition. Like you can change all of these things, right? And you can form a different viewpoint and perspective around these things and really transform your life in a very short period of time with these tools. And I find that to be very important, to where people kind of make that shift in perspective of, well, it's either on or off. Well, I'm either all in or all out, right? And think of it more like a dial, dimmer switch or dial, where you're able to turn it up and down, whether it's on a daily basis or a seasonal basis. But my goal is that you just never fully turn it off, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Because my thing is, like, for all fairness sake, we do that in every other area in our life. Like the average mom, she's not mom. She doesn't go to work with her nurse friends and she's mom. No, she's Nurse Kate or whatever. But then when she comes home, now the dimmer switch comes back on. Now she's more mom.
Now she's all mom.
When she, right.
Yeah.
But then let's say when she lays the kids down and now it's time to go to bed with her husband, now mom is maybe turning it down a little bit up, because she's still got to keep in mind they're in the other room and in case they hear something. But it's not like I'm all mom all the time or I'm all nurse all the time. My thing is, I don't understand why people have these weird rules for fat loss and for fitness, but in the rest of our lives, the other 99%, it's these other contingencies. I think we just need to make it even across the board and all problems go away.
Well, so you can think of it too. Like, I'm sure everyone's seen music being produced, right? You've seen a switchboard for like a music producer, or you've seen like a cockpit that a pilot would maybe use. There's a ton of things, right? There's a ton of dials that can go up or down to manipulate what's happening to the music, right? So if we use the music producer's panel example, imagine you just have 20 dials that truly regulate your entire life and existence. Well, you're choosing to prioritize certain dials over another at any given time, right? And for some of us, we choose to prioritize ones that are surrounding our health or fitness a little bit more, maybe our professional pursuits. Maybe during those times, we turn down the social dials, we turn down the familial dials, you name it. Or it's the opposite, right? And I think the best we can, it's trying to find an equilibrium where, if you've ever seen if you've ever seen that switch, that producer's board or panel be automated, right? So there's automated ones that are responding in real time.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
And so it's so crazy, right? But the dials are adjusting as needed across the board, right? And that's essentially all that's happening. But none of them ever fully go all the way up or all the way down. They're always kind of just being manipulated up or down to help equalize across the board, right? And so it's trying to create a more equal approach.
Yeah.
I'll table the metaphor or analogy, but because I'll get too deep into it. But it's just trying to find this more balanced approach, right? And I don't think that balance is something that you find. I think balance is something that you create for yourself based off of the context of your own life and the way that your life, those things need to be balanced within your own life, right? Because your life is different than most other people's lives, not everyone else's life. But it's not completely in another world, right? It's not completely outside of what other people also experience, right? So what you do may be slightly different, but it's not going to be completely different necessarily, right? So in that, it's like, okay, I know these physically challenging myself is important. Well, that's important for everybody.
Right.
How I physically challenge myself may change based off of my preference, based off of my past. Did I grow up playing sports? Did I grow up not playing sports? Am I naturally coordinated? Am I not naturally coordinated? Do I enjoy these physical challenges? Do I absolutely despise these physical challenges? All of those things start to change how you choose to physically challenge yourself. So yes, how you choose to physically challenge yourself can be very different. But the fact that you need to physically challenge yourself is the same across the board for all human beings and living creatures, right? And same goes with nutrition, and same goes with, so whether it's a certain diet that you gravitate towards based off of your own preferences, whether we get into, some people enjoy a higher carb, lower fat approach. Some people really enjoy a higher fat, lower carb approach. I've existed in both worlds throughout my life at different times and really have benefited from both at different times and preferred to eat a certain way at different times for different reasons. But all are effective for the goal of maintaining my health and physically trying to achieve what I want to physically achieve in that given time frame. And so all things can be effective in that way as long as we're giving them enough attention and have enough intention within them. But there really isn't a world. This world does not work in a way where, okay, I choose, you can get the same benefits from a cognitive challenge physically than I get from a physical challenge, right?
Sure.
I can't cognitively, not necessarily that's not necessarily completely true. You can physically get stronger by visualizing you getting stronger. That's actually proven. They've proven that in the research. So visualization can be big. That's something that is helpful from a more psychological realm. But I'm not going to achieve the same muscular adaptations from sitting and thinking about training versus me actually training. Right. So we understand that there's at least certain truths about the world and about us in the world where we need to take care of the basics, right? We need to get those fundamentals. And I think too, like going back to your previous question of why strength training, to me, it instills the fundamentals of physical movement in a very structured way, in a way that literally anyone that has the physical ability to move their joints in that way can do, right? So we see 80-year-olds deadlifting hundreds of pounds.
Crazy.
You see 12-year-olds deadlifting significant weight, right? Yeah. And it's not to the deadlift. It's just you see people of all ages physically challenging themselves in a structured, controlled way through strength training that has benefits that extend beyond muscle and strength, right? Their health, their lifespan and health span benefits as well. Thinking about not only adding life to your years, but years to your life. And I find that fundamentally to be very important for everyone. And so that's also kind of that thing of how can I be somewhere that I'm useful and teach people the fundamentals of a thing that truly will give more years to their life, regardless of how long their life is.
Sure. That's amazing. One of the other things I was wanting to ask you, and I know we're getting kind of close on time, but I wanted to ask it regardless, is how does someone, because I'd love to hear your side of this, how does someone get the most out of their training sessions? Like when they're in the trenches, they're in the gym now, they're doing their thing, but without getting overwhelmed, without getting like caught up in like almost derailed by details, but how does your average person get the most out of their sessions?
Simplify. Go and simplify and move towards things that you at least somewhat enjoy doing. And choose a rep range that you somewhat enjoy performing. I don't care necessarily what rep range you're doing. I just care that you're trying hard within it. I don't care what form of exercise you're choosing to do. I just care that you're doing it. Right? So simplify and move towards something that you enjoy. And so for some, that's going to be, I just enjoy going into the gym, choosing machines. I'll do 15 to 20 reps. They'll get kind of hard. Then I move on. Great. You're probably getting 80 to 90% of the benefits you need to get from this. I'm happy for you. Now let's complement that with nutrition. Let's complement that with lifestyle and physical activity outside of the gym, maybe some aerobic cardiometabolic work to fully round out the approach. But great. That's all you need from this. So that's great. To simplify an answer, simplify your approach, move towards or gravitate towards things that you do enjoy performing. For some people, that's the big threes. For some people, they need a barbell involved. Okay. Involve the barbell, involve free weights. For some people, that's body weights. For some people, it's calisthenics. For some people, it's CrossFit, whatever it is, right? CrossFit is just an iteration of resistance strength training.
Sure.
That involves different movement patterns. But so it's all, I'm encompassing strength training and resistance training and being inclusive within traditional bodybuilding training, powerlifting training, CrossFit training, Olympic weightlifting. All of that stuff is resistance strength training, like all of it. And so even bodyweight training is resistance strength training. Calisthenics are that too. It's just there's a continuum of what those exist on towards certain adaptations that you're going to move closer towards or adapt to or toward. There's just a continuum of where those exist on that.
Sure.
Or there's a point at which those exist on a continuum. So simplify and move towards things that you enjoy.
I think what's funny is most people do the opposite completely. They make it so complex, and then they make it a suffering contest. Like, how many sets of Bulgarian split squats can I do to make me not even be able to get in my car, or whatever the case is?
Yeah, and people do that with nutrition too, right?
Yeah.
So, what's the hardest diet I can do? What's the most challenging diet I can do?
The least amount of calories I can eat is the question.
What food can I give up? How can I be more disciplined, right? And I think we really value that as a culture. And I think in a lot of ways we overvalue that in our culture, where if there's an easier way to the goal, we don't necessarily value it as much because it isn't quite as hard. But it still gets you to where you're going. So right. You can choose your journey there. But it doesn't negate the fact that you need to have effort towards it. But the effort you're giving can be calibrated appropriately to your needs, right? And so right. For the individual, for the 35-year-old mom that we were discussing earlier, Nurse Kate, she may only need to really achieve what she wants to achieve. She may only need 2 sessions per week in the gym. She may complement that with 2 sessions of running or cycling, swimming, and make sure she's appropriately managing her calories and trying to sleep as well as she can on her shifts that keep changing from days to nights. And well, great. That's it. That's what you do,
yeah. It's not sexy or exciting.
It's not sexy or exciting, but it is all that's necessary for the thing you want to achieve. Right. And I think for many, we do tend to overcomplicate it. But understand, like, you're going to get it again, some of these, arbitrary numbers, but it's truly an 80-20 relationship where you're going to get 80% of the positive benefit from 20% of the actual work. You just need to be putting in the work towards it, right? And I think that's an important part, because inevitably you're going to create momentum. And once you start to create momentum in something, I think we naturally start to gravitate towards wanting to do more of it, because it reinforces what makes us feel good, what makes us look good, what makes us show up in the world the way we want to. It gives us a sense of control and autonomy within our own life. And I think as long as if you're starting from 0, just work towards getting to 20%, right? Because 20% is probably going to get you at least 80%, or get you on the way towards 80% of the benefit or reward from that thing. And then inevitably to close the gap on the rest of that 20%, you're going to have to start to achieve closer to that 80% of effort, right? And so it is sort of this mismatched thing. And I say that in an encouraging way, where you don't have to be giving 80% of the effort to get 20% of the benefit, right? For me, and there's a lot of ways you could break that down, but for me, that generally as a concept, I just think it's more important that you're consistently doing something than scarcely doing nothing, anything.
That's good. I love that. No, I completely agree with that. So, dude, this has been so good. I'm so glad we did this again. Before we go, though, I'd love to definitely. I want you to tell everyone where they can find more about you and everything, but also touch on, if you're cool with it, touch on some of the newer things that you're working on, where if people want to jump on board with your app or look more into what you have going on, touch on that.
Yeah. So, scienceofstrengthtraining.com. That's my new business. That's my new pursuit. That's my new project. And through that, you find my coaching. You'll find my training app that's launching soon, around the new year. But coaching's available now, depending on when this releases. The training app will be around January. the training apps there'll be programs for, which kind of goes along with this conversation, that are called fundamentals. And there's a 3-day fundamental program and there's a 4-day fundamental program, which is designed to get you in and out of the gym in 45 to 60 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week. It works on it's the same principles that I talked about in the beginning, going back to first principles. What do these joints do? What are the muscles that surround those joints? What do those actions of those muscles do? How do we train those effectively in that amount of time? And how do we put in enough effort within those 3 or 4 days to get 80% or 90% there of where we want to be? And then alongside that, you can, if you're a little bit more intermediate or advanced, there's going to be programs for you there as far as whether it's muscle building or more focused on strength or what have you. So there's optionalities within that training app, and it's, there's a forum. It's good, more of a group coaching type of thing where you can, submit exercise videos and get technique feedback and all that stuff as well. So, and then scienceofstrengthtraining.com, I'm hoping again to, like I touched on earlier, to expand that into truly just as an expansive resource beyond my book, where, my book is a great starting point for everyone. I think it's typically $11.99 on Amazon. So it's $12 book. It's worth every penny.
Yes.
What a steal. And I'm really grateful that it's so affordable. And that was a big point of the book, was that I could create something that is expansive and comprehensive while making it affordable. And then if you buy the book and you're like, where can I learn more about this stuff? Like, I'm super interested in it. And that's what I'm hoping scienceofstrengthtraining.com is, where you can go on there, where there's going to be expansive articles on all of the subjects that I discussed in the book, whether you're a gym goer or you're a personal trainer, you can come learn and be a part of that community of whether it's dedicated just lifters or personal trainers or what have you. So that's that. And then as far as social media goes, I hang out on Instagram. I'm the bearded guy on Instagram. Just type in Austin, Austin. My last name is Current, Current, just like the electrical current or the current of the ocean or river or whatever.
Current events, man.
And so I hang out on Instagram. So you can go there, follow me there, join the conversation there. I pretty exclusively talk about lifting stuff, strength training stuff. I talk a little bit about nutrition and supplementation sometimes, but it's mainly strength training stuff, like lifting and exercises and how to make those more effective for you, or make your time in the gym more effective. And I do a lot of tutorial videos on YouTube. So if you're interested in tutorial videos, if you ever have a question on how to perform something, try to search my name and the movement, the name of the exercise and my name. There's probably a video for it. And if there's not a video for it, I'm working on filming a video for it. Yeah.
I love it.
That's it, though. I think that's all you. So scienceofstrengthtraining.com, or you can follow me on Instagram or YouTube.
Dope, man. I'll make sure we'll put all those links in the show notes and all the things. So that way make it easier just to click and go there. So otherwise, dude, this has been great. It's always great catching up. I love what you're doing. I'm the biggest fan of your work from just my end alone. So yeah, I appreciate you doing this. So
I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the ability to talk to your people. And yeah, go grab if anything, go grab the book. Again, it's $12 or less. A lot of times you can find the Kindle version for $1.99. If you do get the Kindle version, I would recommend, pretty much the only 1-star reviews I have on Amazon are all from the Kindle edition.
Those are from assholes.
Yeah, that too. But just kind of buyer beware. If you have like a Paperlite Kindle, if you have something that isn't colored, or it's just a black and white Kindle, or it's very small, you may have a tough time navigating the book because it is very visual. But what you can do is buy the Kindle edition for much cheaper if you just want to kind of see what the book's about. And I would recommend accessing the book via like an iPad or the Kindle app on your phone or something. A tablet with a little bit more functionality and color capability, because again, the book's very colorful and very visual. It's an adult picture book with some science in it, written to understand. But again, if you're not going to get the physical book, which I would recommend, it's beautifully put together in a high quality book. But if you do want the Kindle edition, I would recommend getting it through the Kindle app or accessing it through the Kindle app on a device that's a little bit more capable.
I think everyone needs to say fuck Kindles. I think people need actual pages in their hand, and like the one opportunity we can have to get away from a screen, I think we should. And it's $12. It's not like it's a $300. That's what's crazy. When I was in kinesiology, when I was in school for kinesiology, bro, one kinesiology textbook maybe $800, and yours is easier to understand, way better put together, and more visually sound, and doesn't make you feel like an idiot, but also makes you feel very educated. So it should be way more expensive, but yeah, you're making it the price the price of a fucking latte. So
yeah, no, shit, dude, especially in New York or something. Yeah. If you're buying coffee in New York, just go buy the book and you'll be equally satisfied.
That's right. I love it. Awesome, brother, man. Well, I appreciate you and your time, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
All right, man.
All right. Peace. All right, and we are back. Thank you so much for tuning in once again to today's episode of Dieting from the Inside Out. I know if you stuck around, you got a lot out of this episode. Be sure and shoot Austin a message if you heard him on here and be like, yo, I heard you on Jared's podcast. Holy shit, it was dope. Do me the solid and do that. But otherwise, I appreciate you being here. I have a lot of things in the comment section, or the what do you call it? The description box, or whatever you want to call it, for you. If you are newer to my content and you're like, I don't even know where to get started, I do have a completely free fat loss course that will change the way you look at fat loss entirely. It's called the Fat Loss Checklist. So be sure and go through that. Let's say you're more in the camp of you're just kind of alone in this, and you really value community, and you just would like to be around people who are doing well because you just lack a home base and things like that. You'll want to join my Facebook group, because that is exactly why I built it, because I put crazy amounts of content and help in it. And I've cultivated this beautiful, safe space where thousands of other people just like you who are on this journey are at. And I know you'll love it once you join. So be sure and join that. There's a link below. And if you're in the camp of you're just tired of doing this on your own and you could use some help, and you want to see what it looks like to work with us and what it would take, and what options might look like, and see if it's a good fit, then there is a link to apply for coaching below as well. Otherwise, that's it. I appreciate you being here. I'll talk to you next week.